For many years now, I have waxed on poetically for all things manufactured in Zuffenhausen und Flacht. And we can't forget the countless rounds of the options game where I have beaten you up incessantly about selecting the right contrasting colors as well as options for each candidate over the past 14 years. So with all that, I've got some news to share with you guys. I've done a thing. You see this, not loaned to us from Porsche Cars North America or borrowed from a friend. Rather, I've put my money where my mouth is. So have I got a story for you guys. One, if I'm honest, started in earnest over 7 years ago. That's when I finally admitted to myself that I wanted a Porsche after the abusive relationship of buying cars built in a shed in the southeast of England. But I didn't know which Porsche I wanted to go, at least which direction. Would it have been a classic car or would it be a new car? And if it was a new car, could it be a GT car? And that's when the heavens opened. And the 991.2 Speedster was born, and oh, did I want that car. However, it was crazy expensive, but believe it or not, even more troubling with that car, getting an allocation was akin to solving Middle East peace. So that's when I looked at other options, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't want something that's like my hair on fire or, hey, I need attention. That's why I didn't want a wing car. But I wanted something that was, to be honest, a performance car, meaning a real performance car. So it still had that thing I loved about Lotus, but not the stuff I didn't love about Lotus, meaning everything worked. It didn't feel like a kit car. And if you're up on your Porsche history, it's about that time they introduced the touring flavor of the GT3. And as you can imagine, something about it spoke to me. The only thing that didn't, same problem, allocations were incredibly hard to come by. That's where we enter a very good friend of mine to the story. You guys remember Beau Boeckmann from way back in the day when we did the 50th anniversary of the Mustang. He runs Galpin Ford, one of the largest Ford dealers in the world. He runs Galpin Autosports. You've seen Galpin Autosports on all sorts of car TV shows. And he's just a great guy, so much so, he just founded a website called The Utopian, where they have a very unique view onto the world of cars. Beau, a car guy and a friend, I went to him and I said, Beau, I heard you're getting a Porsche store in your family of dealerships. They've got Ford, they've got Jaguar, Land Rover, Aston Martin, Volkswagen, basically a bunch of dealerships in Los Angeles. And in 2020, they opened up Porsche Santa Clarita. I called Beau and I'm like, hey man, you know I love you, but please, oh please, oh please, can I have an allocation on a GT3 Touring? And Beau, you know, he's an honest guy. He tells you whether you like the news or not directly, and he's just a great car guy. And he's like, look, I got good news and I got bad news for you. The bad news is we don't have any allocations on GT3 Tourings right now. We're a new store. But when I get one, you get one. And this is the point of our story where we switch to a little bit of advice on how to access a rare car or a car that's built in low numbers. It's all about relationships. So yeah, Beau couldn't get me the car right away, but he did say I was in kind of the Galpin family because we had known each other for a while. And this is a group of people that run car dealerships unlike other car dealerships. Like for example, they have restaurants in their car dealerships. Like at the Ford dealer, people come to the restaurant just for the food, not to go shop for cars. The food is actually pretty good, and they opened up a restaurant in this dealership, Porsche Santa Clarita, which I come to, and I highly suggest the chicken sandwich, the panini chicken sandwich with the French fries. It's kind of off the charts. But anyway, that's when I got to know some of the people here beyond Beau. Henrik, as well as Dean, who I've worked with on getting this car. And it was at that point that I got a call from Beau saying, not only do I have an allocation for a GT3 Touring, Take a wild guess whose name is on it. Now, for longtime viewers of the show, doing some forensic accounting, you're probably scratching your head thinking, wait a minute, you knew about this in mid-2020. You're saying the allocation was awarded in late 2020. That would mean this or plans for it came before the Lexus, and there I would say guilty as charged. Now that brings us to an unusual turn in our saga here. If you're thinking about the timeline here, there were unusual world events that got in the way of this becoming a reality, which is why we're having this discussion in 2023 and not in 2021. Obviously, the world kind of fell off a cliff in March of 2020, which impacted this stunning facility here. And by the way, I'm not shooting this in the car dealership part of Porsche Santa Clarita. I'm shooting this in their own car museum that sits in the basement that they call Wunderland. Anyway, back to the saga of putting this thing together. There were a number of things that I wanted to make my own in a GT3 Touring. Obviously, the transmission is a simple decision, but what color do you pick? What options do you pick? How do you detail things out, especially after you and I have spent so much time in all those rounds of the options game? This is the perfect car, really perfect canvas to take all that learning and display it here. Now, without going into gory details of the combined impact on an exercise like this of a global pandemic, a war in Europe, and an economy on the brink of collapse, I'll share some details here and save the entire saga for a separate episode. Number one, there were a number of color changes. Number two, some of the equipment changed, not because I changed my mind, rather, oh, there is a global supply chain shortage, or I had no idea the world car industry is so beholden to the Ukraine. Then the delivery location changed a number of times. I originally wanted it to be European delivery. You can imagine in the middle of a global pandemic, that really wasn't an option, then it was an option, then it wasn't an option, then it was. Basically went on and off, and then finally I got sick of waiting, and here we are in Santa Clarita, California, finally with my now 2023 GT3 Touring. Okay, now that we got all that out of the way, let's press on to what I know you all have been waiting for, a very personal round of our favorite game, the options game, with my personal first ever Porsche, otherwise known as a 992 GT3 mit Touring packet, for a base price of $169,700. Now, I do feel compelled to point out that in that time from 2020 to 2023, the price went up by $9,000. Anyway, we press on to the first option, and that is the color, gentian blue. How many years I've been telling you, gentian blue is a stunning color, but terrible with a black interior. Why does Porsche Cars North America always spec them with a black interior? Because it ruins the color. This is proof of that point. I have spec'd it with a cognac interior, and this color absolutely comes off the page and is a bargain at $840. Now, earlier I shared with you there were a number of changes along the way. I would argue one of the biggest changes in strategy was the choice of color. At first, I wanted something that would pop you in the face, so it had to be Python green. After about 2 weeks on that trajectory, I thought better of it. Then went down the classic route, thinking guards red with neodyme wheels, tan interior. How can you get more classic than that? Then I'm thinking to myself, I want to make it my own. So of course, had to go down the PTS, the paint to sample route. It got approved for that on my allocation, but then they said it's available. It's not available. Then it's available. Then it's not available. Basically, it's one of those things that's very much beholden to the Ukraine. I'll share that in the saga episode. But long and short of the story, that cost about a year in this whole wait. So ultimately switched to gentian blue because blue is my favorite color. Then we press on to one of the cheapest options in this car. The extended gas tank goes up to 23.7 gallons, $230. Then the satin neodyme wheels, that's the bronze finish on the wheel. I was really up in the air about this. When I had my PTS color chosen, I will not share it with you, maybe in a future episode, that was going to be the regular like satin silver finish. But then I'm thinking to myself, why don't we do something special with the gentian blue to kind of pick up the cognac interior? That's when I decided to take the flyer and go for the $1,290 for the Neodyme wheels. Then, of course, this is a $170,000 car. I learned the hard way with a $50,000 car that you don't want to keep on banging the front end. So I paid the extra $3,670 for the front axle lift system. Then another really cheap option, there's a lot of them on this car, the exclusive Porsche fuel filler cap, 160 bucks. This, it falls under the heading, if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. Then we press on to the first of our interior customization. The headliner of this car is finished in a faux suede. However, I wanted the sun visors finished in leather. That's an additional $590. Then something I completely geeked out about. I will admit, this is a track car. I will admit it's a track car without the wing on the back because I don't want the wing. Why don't I want the wing? Because I'm never going to take it on a track. You can laugh at me all you want, but I'm not tracking it. However, because it's a track car, they offer you a fire extinguisher fitted to the front of the right seat for a measly 180 bucks. I had to do it. It looks super cool in there. Then something very strange, you look at the car and you think this looks different, not just because it's a Touring, rather because I've changed some things on the exterior. One of the things you don't notice, the mirrors. On a 992, the mirrors are body color on the top and they're black on the bottom. You can have them trimmed in carbon fiber on the bottom. However, what no one does is have the body color for the entire mirror. Yes, you have to pay extra for it, but well worth it, $660. Then the interior of this car. I had to do the contrast stitch because I've been yelling at you guys to do contrast stitch for God knows how many years, and it wasn't cheap, $3,650. I guess it's a lot of money to eat your own dog food. Here I've chosen red, and that's to pick up some other details of the car, which we'll get to later. Then, of course, park assist. I didn't want this option. I originally in the build said no to this option, but this is where we get into building a relationship with a group of people like this at the Galpin Auto Group. Dean, who is the sales associate that I worked with on this car, and Henrik, who's the sales manager, these guys combined have something like 40 years of experience in the Porsche world. So here I come in thinking I'm gonna save $610. They're like, you're being really cheap. You need to fit the park assist on this car. You're paying God knows how much for the car. Do you really not want to hear if you're going to back into something? So thank you to Dean for providing that suggestion as well as some others. Then we press on to the LED matrix design headlights. No, these are not the Euro always-on headlights where they're high beams. That's still not for sale on Porsches yet, but it's something close. And it ain't cheap, $3,270. Then this car has a chrome package. It's not really like a Cadillac type chrome where it's very bright. It's a satin finish chrome around the daylight opening. It transforms the car. It's well worth $310. And here's a secret no one tells you. That can be fitted to a basic 992, and most people will look at a 992 with that on it and say, wow, that's the nicest 911 I've ever seen, but they don't know why. Now we need to press on to some deep in the weeds customization options. Very subtle changes, but impact the overall theme of the car. We talked about some of the changes with the contrast stitch being in red, so we need some more red trim to pick that up. First stop, of course, would be red seatbelts, $360. The sport chrono gauge, to change the face of that to red, $420. The tack in the center of the dash, change the face of that, $990, and boom, it becomes red. But then there's another change here that, believe it or not, Porsche does not charge you for. The dash of this car, you can have the black finish, which is standard. You can, believe it or not, have a leather dash. I don't mean the top of the dash, the trim is leather. I saw it on a friend's car as Targa, and it is stunning. You can also have a wood dash. None of that can be fitted to this, what carbon fiber can be, but everybody has carbon fiber. However, an option on all 911s, not just GT cars, you can have the trim on the dash, the door panels, and the console to be the same as the body color, and you don't pay extra for it, and you look at the inside of the car, and it's completely transformed. Probably the second biggest value to that fire extinguisher. Then outside the car, one of the big changes, again, you don't notice, kind of like the trim here, the tail lamps. They're always red, aren't they? They don't have to be red. Now this is technically not a serial production Porsche option, rather it's a Porsche exclusive manufacturer option. I would argue the best value in their entire catalog for $990 because it transforms the rear end of the car. Then we press on to me being an audiophile. Most of you know this about me, I love my music. However, one cannot have a Burmester stereo fitted to any GT car. If I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, it's a weight thing. Really? So the best you can do here is a Bose stereo for $1,600. Then you have to look at a car like this, or really any car, as an investment. I'm not really going to drive it a lot, and when I do, I really don't want chips on it. So you can do the aftermarket coverage thing, like that GT, the entire car was covered with film, or from the factory, this can be fitted with film in the front, the mirrors, and the backs of the front doors. I wanted it done during the build process. That was $2,700. Then we press on to the auto dimming mirrors. This falls under the heading of Dean's sage advice again. I wasn't going to spring the $700 for it, but he said, you really need to. Basically, he said, either your brains or your signature is going to be on that contract. Then we press on to the full bucket seats, $5,900. This is one of these things that changed over time. I wanted the 18-way seats. I cannot tell you why I changed to these seats yet. That will be coming in a future episode, but definitely stay tuned because the theme we've been talking about, this change is going to take it to the next level. Then some other options, the ambient lighting, gotta have that, $580. The puddle lamps underneath the mirrors, $160. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, what about the carbon ceramic rotors? This I spent a lot of time back and forth. Originally I was going to do the carbon ceramic rotors, thinking resale. Then I did a bit of digging, and what I found was 50% of GT3 Tourings and GT3s go out with the carbon ceramic rotors. It really didn't have a huge impact on the resale because after all, you're paying 10 grand up front. You're not really getting the whole 10 grand back. So what I did was focus on the performance of those brakes, and I spoke to Achim, who's been on the show before, and I asked him a very direct question, and he gave me a very direct and honest answer. He would spec his own car with the metallic rotors because they are the largest metallic rotors fitted to a road car. There's more than enough stopping power. So I figured his advice I can literally put in the bank. Then there is the service. That actually comes standard on the car. At least the first service Porsche pays for either for the first year or the first 10,000 miles. Then we have to talk about the most expensive option. We talked about the theme on the car and how this has a cognac interior. That's not just a normal cognac interior. Again, over the past 14 years, I've been beating you up about speccing cars like this to a detail, meaning it's your own car. Take the pride and ownership, wait the 6 weeks, the 8 weeks, or in this case, almost 3 years to get your car. You see, this is the Porsche exclusive manufacturer interior. What the hell does that mean, aside from the good contrasting color with the gentian blue? It means there is a lot more leather inside the car in places you wouldn't expect leather. So yes, there's leather on the seats. In this case, the backs of the seats are carbon fiber. That's part of the $5,900 you paid for the seats. But then the entire door panel, not just the top of the door panel, the entire dash, the top of the dash, all leather. And it's a specific type of leather for the Porsche exclusive manufacturer interior in a GT car, meaning it's textured. Then the pièce de résistance. The leather extends to the steering column. As you can imagine, this is not cheap. $15,350. But wait, there's more. There's the destination and handling von Zuffenhausen und Flacht for $1,450. Then the US government, they just had to take their pound of flesh as if living in California, and as we shoot this, gas at Costco, that's the cheapest gas in town, $6 a gallon. So I'm personally offended that I'm paying $1,700 gas guzzler tax because you and I both know this car, even the GT car with 503 horsepower, will do somewhere between 25 and low 30s on the highway. So this is a complete slap in the face. And that brings us to the full retail price of $219,470. Now, those of you that know me or the show know we have to touch upon a couple of serious subjects. First and foremost, you're probably scratching your head thinking to yourself, well, what did you pay for that car? As we learned with the Lexus, I don't really feel comfortable sharing that information, but I will share with you that it is absolutely against my religion to pay over sticker for any car, no matter how cool it is. Then second, and I would argue far more important, the folks who do what I do, basically test cars, drive cars on all the streaming platforms, when they buy a car like this, they omit the fact that they take debt up to their eyeballs, whether it's financed or leased, to buy a car like this. Why do I bring this up? I do not like demonstrating or signaling a life living beyond your means. As you guys know, I live a debt-free life, and that is what I want to portray for you guys. So this car, it is not financed, it is not leased. Why is that important? Because I've learned through many mistakes in life that the fastest way to many choices in life, more options in life, is to build wealth. How do you build wealth? By staying the hell out of debt. Okay, now that we got those pleasantries out of the way, where do we go from here? Well, there's a couple of stops. First and foremost would be a full first drive review of this, my personal car. Number two, there's that item I'm sandbagging you on with the seats. You're definitely going to want to watch that episode. And then I've got some things planned in terms of some road trips already planned with this car early on in its life. I hope to share one with you sometime this fall that would be very unique. With that, I'm going to throw something out to you guys because I'll be honest, I am hugely thankful to you guys because this wouldn't be happening without you guys watching this show over the past 14 years. So a huge vielen Dank, arigato gozaimasu, efkaristo, whatever you want to say it. I am very grateful for the relationship we have created over the past 14 years where we have this open dialogue about these four-wheeled things we love. So here I'm going to open up, I don't want to call it a contest, but some ideas from you guys. I've got a bit of a tradition where I name all my personal cars after Bond girls. It could be the character's name, or it could be the name of the actress that played the character. Like, for example, my first Lotus in the UK was Honey Rider. So I'm gonna open up this one to you guys. What should we name her? Because currently, she is nameless. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And before we sign off today, a ridiculous thank you to Beau Boeckmann, Dean, Henrik, and everybody here at Porsche Santa Clarita and the overall Galpin family, because this wasn't an easy situation to bring over the finish line. And the reality is, this was totally out of their hands. Like, Porsche had all the control here. There's some things you're gonna learn that it was difficult where it didn't have to be difficult, but having Galpin and Porsche Santa Clarita kind of run interference, they made things significantly easier in a way that I didn't quite expect. So a huge vielen Dank to them to finally have this thing sitting here in the California Republic and to finally soon driving it. So with that, until I see you in the next episode, be später.